Welcome to All Things Real Estate on Full Service Radio, 830 WCRN. Now, here's your hosts, Gary Kelley and Brad Avergon.
Good morning and welcome to WCRN's All Things Real Estate. I'm Gary Kelley with RE/MAX and I'm joined by
Brad Avergon with Envision Bank and Mortgage.
What do you think about what's going on in the market right now?
Well, it's very exciting, Gary. It's very exciting. I mean, I think there's some good opportunities. Things seem to be getting a little bit more normal than they were a few months ago. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that we're starting to see inventory creep back up. I think that people that were not in the market have said, the heck with it, I'm going to go back into the market. I think you also have a certain amount of greed creeping in, to be honest. People that are saying, oh, look at what Harry and Sally sold their house for. I'm going to sell my house and I'm going to do better. So we're starting to see inventories go back. We're not quite to the level we were last year, and last year was down because of COVID, but we are starting to see some activity there. The thing that I think is interesting is, generally speaking, pending sales has stayed about where it is every year. And so that suggests to me that houses that come on the market are getting gobbled up, and that's obviously a good thing. So what I see happening right now is you do have the people that are saying, I want to sell my house. I want to cash in on the seller's market, which I perceive is dampening a little bit. I perceive is slowing just a bit. That doesn't mean that the market has shifted to being a buyer's market, but for me it means that instead of getting 20 offers on a property, we might get 10. And properties at the higher end, in some cases, are sitting longer than they were before. That's part of that. Maybe seasonality, the normal real estate cycle kind of creeping back in. Not sure on that. But I think that some of this is very predictable.
Yeah, I think that it's a good thing in a way. We in the sense that we're returning to a little bit more of normalcy. That doesn't mean that properties are going to go down in value, or we're going to see the proverbial bubble burst, as that term's been thrown around. I'm not seeing that, but I think we are seeing a little bit more of a flattening of this steep incline that we were seeing. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think you can have this never-ending panacea of craziness with prices just going through the roof. I hope that sellers are going to understand that and say, okay, Mary and Joe sold their house for X. Let's make
it was Harry and Sally, Brad. Let's keep the analogy together.
Harry and Sally.
Harry met Sally.
Harry met Sally. That's right. But I think this is a good thing, and I think interest rates are still great. So that's going to hopefully get some people, as you said, that were stepped out of the market back into the market a little bit, and that's a good thing.
One of the things that I find interesting in this marketplace is a lot of people are coming in with cash offers. Okay, and let's say that you've got a $400,000 house, and all of a sudden you've got first-time buyers walking in. Yeah, I'm talking people that may be, just for an analogy, 25 years old, walking in with $400,000 cash.
Right.
Okay, how is that happening?
Well, they're winning the lottery, Gary. That's how it's happening. We're having a lot of lottery winners these days. No, what's happening is I think that a lot of first-time home buyers are turning to their parents and or their grandparents that may be sitting in a let's say a cash position where they may not be making a lot of yield on those funds, but they do, they are in a position where they can help their grandson or daughter, grandson out by enabling them to be a little bit more competitive. And what they're able to do is leverage those funds and say, look, yes, you can make a cash offer and we can back you up. I don't know if their intention is down the road to carry that mortgage for 30 years. In most cases, I don't think it is. So I think the intention is that the buyers will either obtain financing at some point, either if they can through the process, during the process, knowing that they are in a cash position, they can still pay cash, or after the closing, and then do what would be called a delayed financing or cash out refinance to pay their parents or grandparents back on that property.
I've actually heard some comments from some corners of the world that there are a lot of trusts buying properties now, and that once it's in the trust, you don't know what is going on behind the scenes for people to get paid back or monies to go back to their normal position, that kind of thing, which I think is interesting. The whole concept of that. So if you're a grandparent and you're sitting on, $500,000 in equity, how do you get to that money? You just can't write a check for it?
Well, typically you can't unless you've prepared in advance. There's a couple of ways that you can do it. One is more of a short-term solution, and the other is a long-term solution. So in the short term, if you have positioned yourself in such a manner that you've put, let's say, an equity line on the property, and you have exposure up to 80% of the value of your property, you do have the ability literally to write a check for that amount and quote unquote either pay for the in my case, we wouldn't have them pay for the property, but gift those funds, let's say, to your relative, so to speak, immediate relative, so grandson or son or daughter, whatever the case may be. And then they can use those funds as cash to purchase the property. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but in most cases, if you're the listing agent and somebody comes in with a cash offer, you're looking to see proof of those funds prior to accepting that offer. So it's not a matter of that grandma and grandpa have said they're going to step up and deliver those funds. You actually need to see them in the buyer's account or somehow some sort of agreement. Is that correct? How do you view that?
Some people come in and I'm going to say they have their act together and they've got a letter from a bank saying that Harry is able to buy a property up to $400,000 cash. And that's all you get. Now, the thing that's nice about that is you don't see what else they have kicking around. So I think it's more discreet, if you will, more of a private banking approach. In other cases, honestly, we get copies of people's fidelity statements or their JP Morgan statement, wherever the money is sitting, we get copies of those statements. And they say, well, this is where the money's going to come from. Now, that's not as clean. That's not as crisp. But at the same time, that may be all they have to represent the funds. And you have to a certain extent, hope that those funds are, that's not some fictitious thing that someone's made up. I've never had that. I've never had one that's gone south because of that. They always seem to end up being good. But that's certainly a risk when you just take a copy of a statement from someone. I'm not an underwriter. I'm not trying to make sure that I know where all the money came from. And I'm also, I know one of the things people in your world worry about is, money laundering. That's not something that I'm focused on. I'm focused on, the house sale and all that, and look to the financial people to make sure that there's nothing going on with money laundering or, I did one time work with a client who wanted to put an offer in the house. It was a divorce situation. She was a bartender and she wanted to put $1,000 down in the house, and she didn't want it to show up in the check at all. So she came in with $1,000. We put it on the table. We fanned it out. We took a picture of it with, as it turned out, my business card next to it to have some degree of connection. And that went off to, and was accepted as part of the deal. I don't like dealing with cash often, but this was a friend and she was in a bind, and that's what we did. So it works out fine.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point about cash offers, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. So not only, when people are dealing in a business where they're dealing with cash, not only does there need to be a bit of a paper trail because of the money laundering issue that you brought up. But when that closing disclosure, that final closing disclosure is cut, the government gets a copy of that. So, there is, it may not be as invisible as people think. For this very specific reason, if you've got somebody that is dealing all in cash, and they've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash, but they're reporting $30,000 in income per year, that those funds need to kind of be explained somehow.
So Brad, I think we have to take a break and pay some bills. If someone wanted to reach you, how would they do that?
The best way to reach me, Gary, is via my cell, and that's 978-375-5531, or via email at bavergon@envisionbank.com. And Gary, how do they reach you?
I'm Gary Kelley at 508-733-6005, or Gary at Move with Gary. And the closing disclosure you mentioned, Brad, first time I heard CD, I didn't think closing disclosure. I thought compact disc. And on that, dating myself, we will stop for a second.
You've been listening to All Things Real Estate on Full Service Radio, 830 WCRN.